Yeah, I think, we're looking at a very classic case psychopath.
A lot of these guys, they're driven by a fantasy that they have in their mind.
What really stuck out to me is that we have found that he was a master's student in criminal justice studies.
Most serial killers, they thrive on stimulation.
We have to learn how to identify the monsters who live among us.
This is Reporter Room with Jessica Della Davies.
Hello, Reporter Room investigators. Today we're going to be talking about Bryan Kohberger. We're also going to discuss the defense team's claims that prosecutors have been withholding evidence from them. Is this true or not? We're going to talk about the gag order that's been in place that's been holding Dylan and Bethany back from telling their side of the story. And we have so many smart subscribers here on Reporter Room. If you're not a member of the Reporter Room family, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. We're going to all watch the trial together. So make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can join us. It's a good opportunity to connect with other people who love true crime, especially leading up to the holidays. So BK and his ever-growing defense team provided testimony from a genealogist in an effort to cast doubt on the DNA evidence. However, they are casting doubt on DNA evidence that is not being used in the trial and ignoring the DNA evidence that is being used. Is this just a ploy by the defense team? The defense team is a dream team that the good people of Idaho are footing the bill for. I'm going to talk about the evidence, and I'm going to talk about Dylan and Bethany in just a moment, so please stay with me. Also, consider becoming a channel member of Reporter Room. We have the best and nicest channel members. We get together for regular channel members only live streams where you can come up on the panel. Please join us. The defense team is putting on a classic, quote, constitutional violations, end quote, defense where they cast doubt on the DNA evidence. They cast doubt on how the evidence was collected. They cast doubt on the investigators, the lab technicians. We saw this in the O.J. Simpson case and in the Casey Anthony case, and it worked very successfully in both of those cases, as both of these defendants were found not guilty on murder charges. So will Bryan's dream team get him off also? I'm going to discuss the DNA evidence along with Dylan and Bethany in just a moment, so please stay with me. So in court last month, BK's dream team falsely accused prosecutors of, quote, hiding its entire case from the defense by trying to keep its method of genetic genealogy investigation a secret, while at the same time refusing to turn over an alibi for Bryan in a timely manner, because the defense team was, at the same time they're claiming they're not getting information, they also complained that they couldn't give an alibi for Bryan because they had so much evidence to go through. So which is it? Because both of these claims cannot be true. When the defense team was finally forced to provide an alibi, BK's special treatment was coming to an end. Remember, that judge gave him weeks upon weeks of an extension. Idaho law gives him 10 days once the prosecution turns over all the evidence. And I know there's been a lot of talk that the prosecution wasn't turning over the evidence. Yes, they did. The court did not order them to turn over anymore. In fact, it was so much evidence that the defense team was complaining at the same time that they were saying, oh, we don't have all the evidence that we want. They're complaining that they have so much evidence to go through that they can't provide an alibi and need an extension. And this extension went from 10 days to weeks and weeks and weeks. The judge bent over backwards, and in my opinion, Bryan Kohberger got a lot of special treatment. So when the defense team was finally forced by the court, and remember, BK got special treatment, he was granted weeks and weeks of a long extension to come up with this alibi so the defense team could go through all of the evidence. But when the defense team had to turn over BK's alibi, it was that he had insomnia and was driving around in his car. So we finally get the alibi from the defense team, and what do they say? He's driving around all night. He has insomnia, and this insomnia just happens to be on the weeks leading up to what happened on November 13th to Ethan, Maddie, Kaylee, and Xana. But it just stops, miraculously comes to a halt as soon as the slayings are over. We're going to dig into the evidence with Dylan and Bethany, and I have some other things I want to share with you in just a moment, so please stay with me. Everything I'm sharing with you is my opinion, and opinions are not facts, so please don't send any negativity to anyone. Let's be kind to each other. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and I noticed that out of the 100% of people that watch, only 25 to 30% of you guys are subscribed. Could the other 70% please help out Reporter Room, help us grow, and subscribe to our channel. So after being promised by the defense team that BK would be exonerated, this driving around alibi left a lot of people wondering about the other defense team's claims, because there was a big idea out there that the defense team just could not lie. They couldn't put forth untrue information. But you can sway it a little bit, and the defense team has been pulling tried and true tactics, just like OJ's Dream Team did. OJ Simpson did this in an effort to sway public opinion. Many people are going to be relieved when the trial finally comes around on October 2nd and that gag order is lifted. In the meantime, hats off to the defense team. I tip my hat to Ann Taylor. They're doing a great job swaying public opinion. Of course, the defense team wants to know the methods the prosecution used to match BK's DNA to the crime scene, but they don't want the cheek swab that they matched BK's DNA to. They want the genetic DNA that's not even being used in court. So these motions that are being filed are simply, in my opinion, a way for the defense team to discredit lab technicians, law enforcement officers, the FBI, the CSI unit, and the defense team can continue to shout and scream that the prosecution is withholding evidence from the real victim in their minds, which is BK, right? Because all of these guys are always the victim. Chris Watts was the victim. Lori Vallow was the victim. They're always the victim. So the prosecution filed a motion for a protective order around the methods it used to match Bryan's DNA to the crime scene. They want to present this evidence at trial without having the defense team leak stuff through their motions. And the prosecution states that BK broke into the 1122 King Road house in Moscow in the early hours of November 13th and carried out this, leaving behind a military knife sheath which was found next to and to the side of Maddie. And the DNA found on the knife sheath was later matched to the defendant after the FBI checked it against genetic genealogy databases. So this, combined with BK's car on the video, led authorities to BK. They stopped BK twice as he and his dad took a 9-hour detour from Pullman, Washington till Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, capturing a cut on BK's wrist. So this, combined with BK's car on the video, led authorities to BK. They stopped him twice as he and his father took a 9-hour detour from Pullman, Washington to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. I told you I always thought that detour was kind of weird. They also got body cam footage because he did have a cut, as I showed you in a prior video, on his right wrist. After seeing BK throwing away his garbage in neighbors' trash cans, law enforcement gathered up the trash. BK was seen wearing gloves, so law enforcement matched Bryan's father, Michael. They matched his sample to the sample they found on the knife sheath. This is what the defense wants to use at the trial because it's easier to poke holes in this method of collection. However, a second DNA sample was collected, and this is what will be used at trial. The DNA evidence that will be presented by the prosecution is a better sample because it was collected directly from BK using a court order. Notice he didn't volunteer to get a cheek swab. They had to get a court order to get that cheek swab. The defense team DNA expert is arguing through motions that the at-home genealogy tests like Ancestry DNA, 23andMe, or MyHeritage are not as reliable as tests conducted by specialized laboratories. And I think the prosecution agrees with this, which is why no one is presenting the genealogy tests or the DNA that was used for this in the actual trial. Instead, the prosecution will be presenting the DNA that they had to collect by a court order because Bryan, who says he wants to be exonerated, didn't provide his DNA. He didn't cooperate with law enforcement. They had to get a court order to collect it. And I think the prosecution is going to use the cheek swab DNA and not the less reliable Ancestry DNA, genealogy DNA. And I'm going to talk about the roommates in just a moment, so please stay with me. So the defense team, they're doing a very skilled and wonderful job of making Bryan the victim by making Bryan looking like the underdog. And it's in our human nature to root for the underdog. And the defense team understands this very well and is skillfully using the court-imposed gag order to their advantage by filing all of this DNA, and they're not turning stuff over to us in their motions. So Dylan and Bethany will be star witnesses, in my opinion, in the October 2nd trial. I expect we'll learn more about that 8-hour time gap. So we know it was Ethan's friend who came by to get Ethan, that Ethan's friend is the one that found the crime scene, and that the whole nonsense about the Greek life being involved in being called over by the roommates, that is just nonsense. Let's talk about confirmation bias. So confirmation bias is a way of thinking that favors that we typically as human beings favor information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs or values. So I believe that the defense is trying to put this information out there in an effort to create a confirmation bias. This is the tendency of us to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms or supports our prior beliefs or values. So they are using this to their advantage, in my opinion, to play to that confirmation bias. They are trying to discredit the DNA evidence now so that people that are hearing this information and don't understand the difference between the genealogy DNA and the fact that it's not even being used and the cheek swab DNA, which is being used in the trial, then they will automatically hear DNA and think, oh, the prosecution is hiding something. What do you think? Let me know in the comments section below. I'll see you next time.